Dude.
Oh, are you filming? Alright, how's a mustache look? Good? Alright, hey everybody, welcome to the second episode of Bachelor On a Budget. And if it looks like I just got out of bed, it's because I did. Let's do a brunch episode of Bachelor On a Budget. And of course, no brunch is complete without a perfect cocktail. Now click the link on the screen to show how I made my Manhattan. Now, what I thought we would do today is do biscuits two ways. We're going to do biscuits with chorizo gravy, and then we're going to do it with a mixed berry jelly. So for the biscuits, you're going to need flour, sugar, baking powder, baking soda, something to cut it with, and some buttermilk. For the gravy, you're going to need sausage. I'm doing Italian sausage and chorizo, some milk, heavy cream works also if you're into a more thick gravy, and some black pepper. And then for the jelly, all we're really going to need is a couple of berries, some sugar, and maybe a little bit of water. So let's get cooking. Alright, so we're going to start with the jelly, and because this is going to take the longest. So what we're going to do is get about 8 strawberries and a small handful of blueberries. Again, you can change the ratios to whatever you like. Use whatever berries you want. And I'm going to get a squeeze of lemon in there also. So we're going to start by washing all of these fruits and then cutting all of the stems off. And then once we've cut all the stems off, we're going to quarter them and throw them in a pot on medium-low heat, maybe about a 4. And then we'll throw all the berries together, kind of smash them together with a wooden spoon and let the juices come out. And then we'll go from there. Alright, so I've only had these berries in the pot for about 2 or 3 minutes, and they're already starting to lose a lot of their water and juices. And that's good, because we want all of the flavors to mend together. I tried using a wooden spoon to kind of break these up, but I was just kind of playing dodgeball with the blueberries here. So I've gotten my pastry cutter, and this is really going to help me kind of smash all the berries apart, release all of the juices, and get all the flavors playing together. In the previous take, we threw in about a tablespoon of brown sugar. We don't want to add too much. So we're just going to meddle it like this and muddle a little bit. And now it's already starting to look like jelly. And we want it to be a really low simmer. Let it simmer for about 45 minutes. Just make sure it doesn't lose too much water. If you do accidentally over-reduce it, just throw a bit of water in, or even some more lemon juice, and everything will come back to where it was. Alright, so now it's time to move on to the biscuits. And I've had everything sitting in the freezer because we're going to grate some butter into this. We want the butter to stay as cold as possible. Now, we'll start off with just a little bit less than 2 cups of flour, because when we sift the flour, it's going to expand in volume a little bit. We can always add more flour, but we can't take any away. So we start off with about 2 cups of flour, maybe just short. We'll get some salt and get a good 3-finger pinch of salt in there. And then we'll get some baking powder. And then the cool thing about baking powder is no matter what kind you buy, it's going to have this little lip in there that will help you kind of level it up, because we want a nice even level of baking powder. So I've gotten 2 teaspoons of that, and I'm going to scant out about half a teaspoon of baking soda. And then you just want to take it and sift it all together into this bowl. Now what I do with the butter is I get a cheese grater, and I just kind of grate my already frozen butter in, because it's kind of hard to cut frozen butter. But what a lot of people will do is get a pastry cutter like that. It also doubles as a berry masher when you're making jelly. And a lot of guys will get a pastry cutter and just kind of cut the butter in. But I'm going to do it with a cheese grater. So I'm just going to peel it back like this and use the big end of a cheese grater. Alright, so we've got about 6 tablespoons of freshly grated butter in there. And we've got about an extra tablespoon or so in this. And I'm just going to throw it in a small pot and let that melt, because we're going to need melted butter pretty quickly. So I'm just going to get in there with my hands and just kind of work everything together with my fingers. And the reason why you want to do it with your hands is because when it reaches a certain texture, you'll stop. Now, you don't want to do this for too long because everything's frozen, and we want to keep the ingredients as cold as possible. I just want to make everything come together and for it to almost resemble coarse cornmeal. And it's okay if you have big flakes in there, like big chunks of butter in there, because that's how you get nice flaky layers in your butter and in your biscuits. Now we're going to make a well in the middle of this bowl. And we'll take the cap off, and we'll get just a little bit less than a cup of buttermilk. Just like the flour, we can always add more buttermilk, but we can't take any away. So I'm going to grab a wooden spoon and bring everything together, starting from the outside and back to the inside. And you can see it's starting to take shape a little bit. And it's looking kind of dry, so I'm thinking at some point we're going to need to add a little bit more buttermilk. So we'll add more buttermilk, just a couple tablespoons at a time until we reach the consistency that we want. Now you don't want to overwork this dough, so as it first starts to come together, we're going to ditch the spoon and get back in there with our hands. And I may have added a little bit too much buttermilk, so I'm going to mix in just a touch more flour. And then we're going to move this to the countertop. So we're going to lose the bowl and get some flour and just sprinkle that all over our countertop. And now we'll spread this all over and just kind of flatten it. Now, we don't want to do this with a rolling pin because we're going to squeeze all the air out if we do. We just want to flatten it and then turn it over onto itself and then keep going in the other direction. And then we'll fold it about 3 or 4 times, and this is going to help us get those nice buttery flaky layers that we like in biscuits. And again, we're not rolling, we're not really forcing the dough, we're just kind of taking it and patting it down and spreading it with our hands. Alright, so we have the dough flattened out. Now, what you can do is use a cookie cutter, just a round cookie cutter, and then pop it in and out. A lot of people will tell you to put your cookie cutter in, twist it, and then pull it, but that's actually wrong because you're sealing the edges, and you're not going to get a very even rise out of it. But I like to have a little fun, and I have this Ohio-shaped cookie cutter. So I'm just going to get in there with my Ohio shape, kind of tear the other pieces off around, and then transfer that over to my baking sheet. And then anything you cut these biscuits with, you want to flour beforehand because you're going to be hard-pressed to get it off if you don't. Now with any of these scraps, you can take them and work them together, but you don't want to overwork it too much because if you overwork your biscuit dough, you're going to get tough, chewy biscuits, and it's not really what we're going for. We want a nice, soft, flaky, layery, buttery biscuit. So we're going to take this and throw it into a preheated oven for about, let's say about 25 minutes, 20 to 25 minutes. Start with 20, and then always turn it up from there. And then next I'm going to show you how to make gravy. Alright, so we got our cast iron heated up all the way, and you'll notice heated up all the way when you throw a few dabs of water into it and it boils off right away. And it's only on about a 4, we don't want to burn our sausage. So we've got about 5 ounces of regular Italian sausage and about 4 ounces of chorizo, and we're just going to get that right here in the skillet. Now, use a spatula. I'm using this rubber spatula. You can use any spatula that you have, and just kind of break it up into pieces. Alright, so our sausage is pretty brown. So what we're going to do now is get a tablespoon or 2 of flour and sprinkle it on there. I'll let the flour absorb some of this grease that we have coming off of the sausage. This is going to be the base for our gravy. Now once it looks like the flour has absorbed most or all of that flour, once the flour has absorbed most or all of that grease, we're going to take about 2 or 3 cups of milk, about a half a cup at a time, and introduce it to the gravy. Now when you add the milk, it is going to cool everything considerably, so we're just going to work a little bit at a time. We're going to do it in batches. I do about half a cup at a time. Now this is the time where you can start adding spices. Now since we're using chorizo and we're using sausage, those already have a lot of spices in them, but homemade gravy goes really well with some fresh ground black pepper. So I'm going to take my pepper grinder here, and I'm just going to scant in a few tablespoons of black pepper. And then we're going to let this simmer and reduce for about 15 minutes, and then we'll be ready to eat. Alright, so this is just about what your gravy should look like when it's done. You see that it's simmering a little bit, and it's really thickened up. It's taking on a lot of the color from that chorizo, and that's what we want. And then the final step will be to put everything on the plate, and then it's time to eat. Alright, so it's been about 20 minutes, and these biscuits are looking just about done. As you can see, these two have held their Ohio shape a little bit. So what we have is we have this melted butter from before, and I'm just going to take a pastry brush and brush these biscuits, and that helps to get a good golden brown. Words are hard. And we're just going to brush it everywhere with just a little bit of melted butter. Alright, so we've got our jelly spread over this biscuit, and we've got some chorizo gravy with some chives on this biscuit. And now whether it's sweet or savory, we have a meal that even the most discerning brunch lover is going to love. You put that together with a drink, and what else do you need on a Sunday morning? For me, bourbon and breakfast make a perfect pair. Perfect pair. You get it? Because it's perfect pair Manhattan, and I said to the perfect pair because you get it. You get it?
They get it.
Alright, good. Everything's coming together and it's almost time to eat. Water's gonna reduce out and I don't know what to say. It's almost time for breakfast and it's almost time for brunch. I'm making some gravy and we're gonna have between breakfast and lunchtime.